Well, that's not all the business talk we have for you. We have Business Morning on Sunrise Daily coming right after this very moment.
Hello, welcome to the midweek trading session right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. We know the MPC raised rates again for the second time, and we've seen the Naira actually respond to that, but we see mixed sentiment at the NAFEM there. We see the previous close, 1,408 Naira to the dollar, an appreciation right there to close at 1,382 Naira, up 1.78%. So we're seeing some strengthening in the FX market. That's for the Naira. NAFEX, 1,415 Naira 46 kobo. That was a close from 1,420 Naira, 0.37% gain. That's what we see for the Naira in the FX markets. And definitely we know how interest rate hikes impact the country's currency, and we're seeing a strengthening there for the Naira with the interventions we see from the CBN. Let's get a check on the oil market now. Oil prices fell for a second day today after reports that crude stockpiles in the U.S., as the world's biggest oil user, surged on signs major producers are unlikely to change their output policy in a technical meeting that's coming up next week. Brent, $85.42 a barrel, down 0.96%, about 1% drop there. And we see WTI crude, that's a U.S. grade, $80.89 a barrel, still holding on to that $80 level, not sub that level yet, but we're seeing a lot of volatility in the market. Maybe we might get a weekly negative close with what we're seeing right now. Last week was about 3% above the average closing price. That's for most of the averages that we track here in Nigeria. All right, let's get some other stories. Latest access to finance report by the Enhancing Financial Innovation and Access Agency has revealed that nearly 50% of adult Nigerians are financially excluded, and that's due to poverty. According to the report, this was despite the growth recorded in formal financial inclusion in the country in 2023. FINA disclosed that formal financial inclusion grew from 56% in 2020 to 64% in 2023. While describing this as a good progress, it noted that approximately 40 million adult Nigerians remain formally excluded. The report commended the Central Bank of Nigeria for encouraging competition in the market and enabling a non-bank-led approach, which is driving the growth in formal inclusion. It, however, notes that the formal access to about 64% is only the beginning for Nigeria. Well, also from the CBN, authorized dealers that are unable to provide the Naira cover for the FX inflows for their foreign investors to purchase money market instruments can now approach the CBN to sell the FX and receive Naira equivalent to their account. The Central Bank of Nigeria shared this information after reports that due to Naira liquidity squeeze in the banking industry, authorized dealers are sometimes unable to purchase money market instruments for foreign investors. This, according to the regulators, against the current monetary policy stance of the CBN, as a major objective is to encourage foreign inflows into the economy. Authorized dealers, therefore, can formally write the CBN using the letter heading of their bank to make the request. And as I said before, for the second time this year, the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee has hiked benchmark interest rates by 200 basis points to 24.75% from 22.75%. Furthermore, the Apex Bank retained the cash reserve ratio at 45%. Asymmetric corridor of the MPR was adjusted to plus 100 basis points, minus 300 basis points. With Nigeria's headline inflation surging to 31.7% in February, the committee found it necessary to hike the MPR rate again, as expected by experts. Take a listen.
For the second time in 2 months, the Monetary Policy Committee is convening to address the media after its 2-day meeting. First, the central bank governor who heads the committee reels out its decisions. This includes to raise the monetary policy rate by 200 basis points, to adjust the asymmetric corridor around the MPR to plus 100 or minus 300 basis points, to retain the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45%, to adjust the cash reserve ratio of merchant banks from 10% to 14%, as well as retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
The Monetary Policy
The
Committee,
governor of the central bank gives reasons for the decisions.
the considerations of the committee at this meeting focused on the current inflationary pressures and the need to anchor inflation expectations as well as ensure sustained exchange rate stability.
Recently, the bank has continued to bear its mind on key issues that affect the economy. The Apex Bank boss seized the opportunity to clarify the bank's position on some of these issues.
For price discovery to happen, certain fundamentals or certain attributes need to be in place. And you would recall that there's been a whole myriad of different circulars that have come out over a period of time, which were designed to remove those distortions such that the market became a lot freer and the concept of willing buyer and willing seller became something that was a lot easier to establish.
And on the Binance matter that has recently dominated conversations.
In this particular case, the responsibility for regulating cryptocurrency is not our own. It isn't ours. It is strictly that of the Security and Exchange Commission.
The next meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee is scheduled for May 20th and 21st, 2024. Before that time, though, the central bank expects a moderation in the inflation rate. Sarah Chimugu, Channels Television News.
Yeah, and this is the second meeting for 2024, the 294th meeting of the CBN, but we're already up 600 basis points in MPR in 2024. Joining us now is Kalu Aja, a financial expert, joining us via Zoom from the US. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, how you doing, sir? Good morning.
Yeah, I'm doing good, but it's another hike, not as big as the first. How are you seeing this? And we're seeing the CBN governor there saying that inflation rate should moderate before the next meeting. How are you seeing this?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's expected that once inflation goes up, the CBN governor is going to hike rates. He's very hawkish about that. He has communicated that clearly. But I'm not sure he can determine where inflation is going to end up, because the key driver of inflation in Nigeria, as we know, is food. So the CBN has they can't produce food. He's basically a hostage to the federal government's, plan to eradicate the banditry that is causing the lack of food supply to rise in Nigeria, to then bring down those prices and then bring down the CPI, which then brings down inflation. So yes, it was expected hike, but I don't think the CBN governor knows where inflation would be going forward. Yeah.
All right, and definitely, I'm sure the average investor would want to know how to profit, from this, even though we know cost of borrowing is getting more expensive at this time. What would you say is the right way to go about this as an investor to navigate all of this interest rate hikes?
Well, you see, what it does right now is that it makes the cost of capital very expensive for the SMEs and even for everyone in Nigeria. So if you have a bank, the banks would earn more because, of course, they're going to charge more on their loans, but the pool would reduce, but they'll make some money, right? So for you, your cost of capital is going to go up. If you have a credit card, it's going to hit you it's going to hit you in terms of higher fees. Those fees go to a provider, and that provider makes more profit. So those guys make more profit. You've also got to look for companies that do elastic products, things that Nigerians must buy. Food, especially the food companies, the cement companies, those guys have elastic product that even though the price goes up, Nigerians still have to buy. So that's where you want to go to. You want to avoid the luxuries, the not to haves, the holiday guys, the things that Nigerians can afford to live without. Those guys are going to really start to speed down on the pecking order in terms of spending. So it's necessities. Look for those companies that produce those stocks that have necessities or brands that Nigerians must buy. That's where you want your money to be. This favors T-bill guys. This favors savers. As interest rates go up, savers make more APY on their returns. So it's better. It's catching up to inflation, but we're still not having a real return. Yeah, but it's catching up.
Right, and we're definitely hoping, we can tame inflation, at some point. But now we're seeing some stability in the FX market now, consistent, gains. That's for the naira at this point. But we're not really getting that stability when it comes to inflation. How much of this strengthening of the naira, is helping reduce inflation at this point?
Because they should be coupled together, right? So with the CBN governor said that the inflation in Nigeria is driven by the pass-through, the imports pass-through into Nigeria. But look at the problem now. Nigeria's inflation is caused by high food prices. The stability of the exchange rate doesn't affect that high food prices because we're not really importing or we're not allowing food to come in. The customs is still using the high exchange rate set by the CBN to even import non-food materials. So there is no connection between the exchange rate and food in Nigeria because locally the Nigerian food in Nigeria is not, the supply is not sufficient to meet demand. Hence the price is going up, and that's the inflation. So even if dollars is stable, the supply of food has not kept pace with demand. And we can't fix that even if dollar is 1-to-1. We've got to really go to Nigeria and increase the supply. So it's not a dollar issue. It's a supply issue of local tubers, local meats, local fish from the Nigerian farms and forests to the Nigerian cities. Not really to do with the dollar exchange rate, in my view.
Right. And talking about supply, with the big tightening that we've seen in early this year and till now, Nigeria's money supply hit 95.56 trillion. That's a new high in February. Despite the tightening stance, help us understand this.
There's a lot of liquidity out there, a lot. We are just coming off 23 trillion that was printed, which we put it into bonds, but there's tons of liquidity. The state governments were giving funds to basically spend as a loan. We have lots of liquidity, more or less, and this hasn't been taken away. The CBN is just starting now. We've got 45% CRR to take that cash out. We've had this high MPR now to make cost of credit very expensive. So I think we're seeing the real hawkish stance of the CBN to take the cash out of circulation. But Nigeria is a cash economy, and it was made worse last year when we had the cashless banking, the change of naira issues. A lot of confidence was destroyed in the online banking, electronic banking. So now you see a lot of folks keeping cash just in case electronic methods fail. And that is basically what we're seeing. So until we go back to where the guys can trust the ATM, to go to an ATM today, you don't really see a lot of cash. Until we can get to that stage, you're going to see a lot of cash flowing around, and maybe the CRR moves up some. But for now, we are a cash economy. That's just the way it is right now.
And hopefully when you also open the bank apps, you don't get that error message first when you're trying to send money. Those are one of the issues too. Well, we see the CBN governor there insisting that all FX backlogs have been cleared. Keyword, verified. And he painted a picture of what, unverified claims look like at this time. But we're still getting a lot of unverified claims. How are you seeing it?
Lademi, the airlines are saying it's not just a question of verified claims, but the question of the price that you want to settle them. They are saying they sold those tickets when the naira to the dollar rate was different from today. So if you settle them at today's price, they've lost money. So it's not just that we're settling, but at what price are we settling? That's actually a second point that they're also raising. So if you pay me now for a debt that was incurred 2 years ago when the naira was 400, I've lost money when you do that exchange conversion. That's also their point they're making. They may have a point there, but, it is what it is,
2024, do we get some kind of soft landing, no landing, or is it definitely going to be a hard landing for the economy?
I think we're just starting to see the reforms. And sadly, right, we removed subsidy on PMS imports and on the dollar. I think we're going back just a bit now to subsidize PMS and also to subsidize the dollar. The dollar is stable today because the CBN is selling dollars at subsidized price to the BDCs. So in a way, we are cushioning the effect of the real exchange rate of the naira, and we're waiting for the oil exports to take off that will then replace what we're doing. So if the key thing, Eladi, is this: if we do not get oil exports back to those 2000s or even 1800s, then all this reform might be in jeopardy, because we really have got to get crude oil revenues flowing into Nigeria. If you look at the trade report, we're importing more food than we're exporting food. Look at the non-agricultural export, it's low. Nigeria is really surviving on the exports of crude oil and gas. If we don't keep those things flowing to bring those dollars into Nigeria, then these reforms, this is a stopgap by the CBN. Moving at the fiscal side, the civil side will take over and grow the economy and then supply the bank, which is the CBN, with dollars. For now, the CBN is doing a short-term stopgap. They can't do this forever. They can't stay to be this forever. So the sector has got to step up and take charge. Otherwise, like you said, hard landing, we're looking at it.
Yeah, and I did see your response to one of your ex-followers there, how to increase FX liquidity. And you did say export, export, export. Thank you so much.
That's the word.
Kalu Aja, always great having your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
You too. All right, let's get a check on the equities market. Now, how to respond to the latest hike. We know equity markets don't really like rate hikes, and we had a bearish close, 0.18% down, and we see the equity cap sitting at down about 104 billion naira. Let's look at the trading activity. That was kind of subdued there with value on deals down. Deals was down about 7%, but we had more volume, 22.03% compared to the previous trading session. If we look at the sectoral performance now, we see financial services, banking, insurance in the green. Again, the banking counter, though, marginally up, but we see consumer goods down 0.12%, industrial goods down, and oil and gas following that expected unchanged sentiment we see there. The top trades, GTCO, UBA, Zenith Bank, financial services again, 67.15 million US was traded for GTCO. So we see negative reaction to that latest hike there. Well, let's look at another discussion. I've seen Nigeria's unemployment rate surge to 5.0%. That's with a new methodology in the third quarter of 2023 from 4.2% in the previous quarter. The latest labor force survey did show that, and recently the federal government launched the Outsource to Nigeria initiative to connect talented and skilled hands in the country with global business process outsourcing market. That's valued about $8.79 trillion. Joining us now for this conversation is Adebola Mololu, CEO, GFA Technologies, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you.
Hi, Laddie. Thank you for having me.
So we're seeing that this outsourcing market is getting really bullish, at this time, and Nigeria is looking to actually tap into it. Talk to me about what we currently gain from that market at this time.
Laddie, I'll say to you, the name of the game is export, export, export.
Right.
We're talking about exporting crude, and then we also need to begin to talk about exporting services. If you remember, 60% of our population is less than the age of 25. So it means that we have a young population. In fact, the World Bank even says that by 2050, 40% of the world's employable people will come from Africa. We're not going to have to wait till that time. We need to start exporting our services today. Now, remember, the most important resource that Nigeria and most other African countries have, it's not oil, it's not gold, it's not palladium, it's people, it's services. The UK, for example, is a big, huge financial hub. And so basically, what we are doing in Nigeria, I guess, and as many small businesses and business owners and even tech companies are doing, is to take advantage of the strengths that we have and actually say, how can we provide services to other countries? So not just providing services within Nigeria or within Africa, how can we serve other people in the US, in the UK, and other Western countries? And so the reality is there is an existing model which has been used by many countries like India, like Bangladesh, like Vietnam, on business process outsourcing. And there you go. It's about export, 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 and let's export our services.
But do you have to travel to the country to provide your service?
Not really. That's the funny thing. And this is something that India has done very, very well. So, for example, in India, you have outsourcing villages, places that maybe before now were just forests and have now been developed where you have 20,000, 50,000 people in that location, and all they're doing is providing services across the world. I was in the US recently and I had a problem and I needed to call the customer service. And of course, my call got routed to India. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, why isn't the call being routed to Nigeria? I mean, there are many other opportunities in there. So if you think of business process outsourcing, you'll be thinking of things like call centers. But it's not just that. You have knowledge-based BPO, that's knowledge-based outsourcing. So the likes of cloud architects, engineers, and things like that. You have your client-facing outsourcing. So the likes of customer support, like I mentioned. And if you really think about it, even sales support, because every company needs people to reach out to potential customers and bring more people into their pipeline. And then you have the non-client facing outsourcing, which is everything from data entry, data analysis, HR, bookkeeping and accounting, and so many other things. So as you can imagine, literally, we can sit here in Nigeria and have thousands, if not millions of people providing services to the rest of the world.
Right. I know we've been talking a lot about brain drain, at this time. And how much of this, would create that risk of increasing brain drain?
Actually, I coined the word, would promote what I call internal japa, which means so we know the word japa typically means Africans or Nigerians leaving Africa and moving abroad.
Right.
In this case, these people can live here, can work here, work remotely. So they're literally living in Nigeria or living in Africa.
So that's like jakpada.
Yeah, jakpada, sort of. But in this case, they haven't left. So that's why I said internal japa.
Right, so you've not left at all.
You've not left at all. But you're living here and earning foreign currency from whatever country you're working in. So if you are living in Nigeria, for example, and you're providing services in the US, and you're earning money in the US currency, in the USD, it means you can live a nice life, cushy life here. And in fact, not only that, you now have companies like JFA that are beginning to provide a lot of things to facilitate that. We currently have Africa's largest tech campus. Our current capability, based on currently, we have about 1,000 workstations in there for people to actually live in Nigeria and work abroad without any issues. So, internet covered, light covered, and all of those issues, right, that we have locally. And we're expanding that capability with our partners to about 10,000 people. So literally, you can imagine companies like us and many others are beginning to say, how can we make it easy for this to actually happen?
Right, but we have some people actually, living here and working abroad at this time. But if you face that, you don't have any other, paid employment at this time, or you're just facing that outsourcing market, you don't enjoy some of the other benefits, when it comes to health insurance and all of that. How can such workers actually also inculcate that?
You actually
enjoying health insurance and all of that.
Very, very good question, and thank you for that, Laddie. But the thing is, currently, you have many, as we say, and everybody knows, SMEs form the backbone of every economy, and by extension, the freelancers and those who work for themselves or work for other people remotely. The reality is, in their compensation, they can factor in the cost of health insurance and some of those things. And sometimes if you even work in an outsourcing company, that's already covered. So I mentioned in India, not to call their names, but there are some organizations that currently hire as much as 200,000 people in terms of providing outsourcing services, and they make sure that things like health insurance are covered. However, where it's individuals, there are many, Nigeria's HMO industry has grown and blossomed. And so this is one of those things that we're exporting, but it affects many industries. So I mentioned the HMO industry. Government even begins to benefit from this because you're being paid in USD, and naturally your taxes would be paid in the foreign currency. And
we're trying to get all of that foreign currency in at this time.
Oh yes. Again, the name of the game is export services, export products. But the reality is that we know that just the way our economy is, services is much, much larger than even the products and oil that we export.
Right, but definitely, even though you have this service, there has to be some kind of demand. Paint a picture of what the demand looks like right now for most of the Nigerian talent.
So demand globally is huge. So the business process outsourcing industry is currently valued at $600 billion and estimated to grow to $1 trillion by 2030. Now, if you think about it, our entire economy in Nigeria is roughly about $400 billion. So technically speaking, if we were to even move the entire economy, right, into outsourcing, it will swallow us up because there is enough for things to go around. And this is one of the ways that we can actually grow our income and grow our people. If you think about it, there are 8 billion people in the world right now. Nigeria has a huge population, by any standards, of around 220 million people. So the reality is that if we play our cards right, and if we allow the private sector to work in conjunction with the public sector and the policies that the government is making, then there are opportunities to swallow our entire workforce in terms of providing one form of service or another to the global population.
Right, and talk to me, everybody wants to, invest in the next big thing, at this point. What are the investment opportunities available, in this value chain?
So, as you notice from what I've said, it's a hydra-headed value chain. So it's not just one. What many people have previously, especially venture capital investors, have really put their funds in the fintech industry, right? That's what they have traditionally done, because at the end of the day, when you invest in things that involve money, it has a way of going into other industries. However, the reality is that these days, the next big thing is actually people. You would see a lot of HR technology solutions out there if you are taking notes. In fact, if you drive around the city of Lagos or in any of the metropolitan cities in Nigeria, you begin to see a lot of billboards and things like that promoting different HR organizations. You're going to see a lot more of that. Not just HR, but even things like bookkeeping and accounting companies, customer support, sales support. These are the areas that there's going to be a lot of investment in. Again, just as I said, because of the availability of people. We take this for granted in Nigeria that this is how the rest of the world is. It is not. The population in North America is aging. In Asia, it's aging. In Europe, it's aging. The whole world is looking to Africa to actually begin to supply the talent that is needed in order for business and for work to actually go on.
Right. It's quite incredible how young the African population is at this time, and it seems we're getting younger.
Just on that point, so in Africa as a whole, the average age is 19 years old. In Nigeria, the average age is 17. And remember, this is the youngest population in the entire world. So Nigeria is even younger than the African
Quite
age.
Incredible. That's a population that has so much energy.
Correct.
At this time. Thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. Debola Omololu, CEO, GFA Technologies. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Laddie.
All right, so that's how it's looking, the midweek trading session, and definitely be looking out for the close. That's for the Naira and the equities market, and also the fixed income market. I'm going to hand things over now back to the Sunrise Daily team. Thank you for watching.